This is a hopeful story that I want to share because maybe someone else might benefit from it. We usually do true crime and dark mysteries on this channel, but today I want to do something different. I'm going to share with you my cancer experience. For our regular subscribers who want to jump out now, I understand. Hope to see you again soon. Having you with me means everything. To anyone else who might be dealing with a terminal disease, maybe you might find something helpful here, whether it's the approach to supplements or to alternative therapies, or whether it's the state of mind that's helped me get the most out of my days. It's a state of mind I kind of just stumbled into. It wasn't part of some therapy, and it wasn't because I'm one of those mind over matter people. I'm not. I can't even will myself into going through an MRI, claustrophobia. But I do think these things have actually bought me more time, maybe years more. I have nothing to sell and nothing to preach, nothing to promise. I'm not here to inspire anyone. My battle has been so much easier than what many people go through. My courage hasn't even been tested yet. I'm just related what's been working for me for 4 years in case it might work for someone else. Warning, there will be a few corny jokes. And there won't be anything sappy or quotable, no magic words, just practical stuff. I think when you sum up your life, the mark you left in the world, you hope you made the lives of those you encountered a little bit better. Too often, I haven't been able to succeed in that. For long stretches, I've been more like a ghost drifting through, not really impacting anyone. But it's never too late to turn that kind of thing around. From the moment I was diagnosed, I've looked at cancer as a kind of opportunity. You'll get a sense why as we go. I think chasing that opportunity has given me a chance to stay in the game longer. But most importantly, it helps me sleep easy at night, and it makes me feel life is still good. Very good, in fact. No, I'm not selling you religion or any product, and I'm not on any mind altering drug. So if you got any, keep me in mind. Even if you've been dealt a bad hand, there's still plenty of reason to wake up feeling energized to take on a new day. I'll explain what has worked for me, and I'll go over my layman's approach to supplements and alternative medicines. Okay, a doctor walks into the room to see his patient. He says, I got bad news. I'm afraid you have cancer and Alzheimer's. The patient smiles. Well, doc, at least I don't have cancer. I remember an old episode of Seinfeld. Jerry's dentist, Dr. Watley, converted to Judaism. This offended Jerry, not as a Jew, but as a comedian. He felt Watley had only converted for the jokes. Well, I don't suppose that trade-off will be worth it with cancer. At least not the jokes I got for you today. But there are positives you can get out of cancer. Hey, if cancer doesn't get you to finally make those personal changes you've always been thinking about, what will? So what's been my approach? Well, I have tried a lot of products that can be ordered online, and I'm still using quite a few. I keep my eye out for new things too. Maybe some of the things I'm using are actually helping. I don't think I want to be too specific on those things here because I'm not a doctor. I will talk about my approach to finding things a doctor is unlikely to talk about with you. Maybe something I say will help you, or maybe you can share something that will help me. I feel good. I feel optimistic. No drugs, just peace of mind. And that can be a challenge for people with this diagnosis. So far, so good, but of course, I have a long way to go. Okay, I'm going to let YouTube break in now with one quick commercial, which you have the option of clicking through. After that, I'll go over my story from the beginning, get into my approach to treatments outside those prescribed by the doctor, and explain what allows me to sleep at night and jump into the day ready for challenges. I'm always curious about what ads the algorithm will send my way. Are you? Oh, quick story on that before we let YouTube in. The other day, a friend of mine whose last name is Fleming told me over the phone that as a kid, he had the nickname Phlegm. Well, over the next few days, I started getting ads on how to get rid of phlegm. So let's see what she thinks you're interested in. Okay, what did you guys get for an ad? Was it targeted at your interests? Let me know in the comments. Also, forgive me for the shades. The medicine I'm on makes my eyes sensitive to light and apparently to corny cancer jokes. Okay, let's do this. Hi, I'm Kevin. Very nice to meet you. This is my cancer story. A little over 40 years ago, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. The fact that someone can even say that after 4 years should encourage anyone just now getting this diagnosis. Medicine is making tremendous progress, and there is hope. Let's go back about a year and a half before I was told that I had cancer. I started to get an unusual numbness in one hand. As months went by, the numbness turned to pain, and the pain moved also into the elbow. I figured tennis elbow or something like that. I tried all kinds of stuff at the gym and exercises at home, but it only kept getting worse. It got so that I had to sleep on my arm hanging off the bed. I had an exercise band on the bedpost. Every hour or two, pain would wake me up, so I'd use the band to do triceps exercises, which did help a little. But then the pain started to spread to my upper back. Okay, apparently this wasn't tennis elbow. The pain was pretty severe. Sometimes it spread into my feet or in my other arm. So I went to an orthopedic doctor and was told it was probably a disc in my neck. Good. A plan of action. He gave me a cortisone shot and some potent stuff to take the edge off the pain. I'm not going to mention the doctor's name. You'll see why in a moment, as what then happened was a little shocking and, well, fits right in with the weirdness of my life. But I liked the doctor. He was a nice guy, easygoing, generous with his time, gave me his cell phone number. Okay, next step was to get scans on the neck. They attempted to get the MRI twice, but as I said, claustrophobia. So this delayed things by a couple of months. But I was able to finally get through a CAT scan. 5 days before I was scheduled to see the doctor to go over the results, I got a call from his office. Can you come in today? Yikes, that's never good, is it? That's where the journey kind of begins. So the doctor comes into the examination room, and he's a young guy. He's nervous, jittery. I think this was his first time having to deliver this kind of diagnosis. So we were both rookies. I soon saw he had an extra reason for being jittery. He had a ring of white powder around one nostril. Having spent my life in the bar industry, I knew what that was. So I guess my doctor needed some self-medication before having to tell a patient, perhaps for the first time, that he had metastatic cancer. Hey, I don't judge it too harshly. I mean, I can't even imagine the stress of being a doctor. I could not do that job. But it's kind of funny in a personal way for me because I spent my whole time in the bar industry trying to combat cocaine dealing and drug use in the bar. And now I'd been out of that industry for several years, but here it was again, this time in a doctor's office. After the doctor broke the news to me, he seemed so upset that I started trying to calm him down. Maybe he was using some kind of reverse psychology on me. I don't know. Well, eventually he said, "You seem to be taking this very well." I told him I was just thinking about what I was going to say to my family. So he slid his chair up beside me and started explaining the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. I laughed, telling him, "Jesus, doc, I'm not ready to start planning my funeral yet. I want to fight." And that's been my mindset all along. Leaving his office, I drove to the supermarket and bought a bunch of stuff I figured I'd be able to munch on so I wouldn't lose weight. I knew nothing about cancer. All I had were images in my head of Steve Jobs. It wasn't a matter of vanity. I didn't care what I looked like. It was a matter of not surrendering to it. So I bought bags of Snickers bars and ice cream sandwiches. I know, naive, crazy, absolutely the wrong stuff to get when you have cancer, which loves sugar. But at that point, I didn't know any other way to fight. And it turns out, I think, that this is crucial, trying to find ways to fight. Anyway, next step was to determine where the main cancer was. So they scheduled a PET scan, which takes images head to toe. However, a mistake was made, and they gave me a bone scan instead. I've generally had a great experience with the medical community. I'm very grateful, but you really do have to try to monitor things yourself as best you can. The system is big, and it's run by human beings. Mistakes, errors in judgment, corporate ambition, egos. It's all there. So my next visit was with an oncologist at a Dana-Farber branch just north of Boston. My brother and sister joined me, which I much appreciated. I was nervous. What am I going to hear? How many months do I have left? When the doctor came in, a woman in her 30s, I smiled and held up my hand. I said, "Hopefully, doctor, you can tell me something encouraging." My blood pressure had gotten actually really high that morning. She pointedly refused to shake my hand. She took off examination gloves, which for some reason she wore into the room, sat down at the desk next to me, and logged onto a computer. I felt like I had already failed some kind of personality test. She proceeded to read out loud the location of the bone lesions. She read out loud every single one, all 26 of them. Somewhere in the middle of it, my sister started crying. The doctor was completely immune to any of that. I guess my whole family had failed some test in this doctor's eyes. She just went on reading. It felt like my doctor had walked in, took one look at me and went, "Ew," like she was actually rooting for the cancer. When cancer metastasizes and spreads, That means it's already stage 4, no cure. Metastases are little growths. At this point, we didn't know what kind of cancer I had, just that it had already metastasized and spread. As it turned out, I also had 2 in the head, as the mobsters like to say, 2 little growths. Well, as soon as we left the office, my siblings told me no more of that psychopath. So they arranged for me to switch to Mass General Hospital in Boston. To be clear, I'm not knocking Dana-Farber. As I know from studying material from my true crime episodes, monsters can and do lurk anywhere. No profession or institution is exempt. A friend of mine is being treated for the exact same cancer at Dana-Farber in Boston, and he's very pleased with his care. So I finally had my PET scan to search for the primary cancer. The kindly doctor called me on the phone with the results. He said, "We found a spot on your lung." I couldn't help smiling. I already understood that the cancer had widely spread, but the doctor's instincts were to call it a spot. I've come to appreciate the care with which they word things. Despite having to come to work every day and tell people bad news, most of these people show a lot of compassion. Quick joke. What's the most expensive haircut in the world? Chemotherapy. You saw that coming, didn't you? I did warn you. So next I met with a lung cancer oncologist. I'm still with him. He's involved with work at a major cancer research institution, so he's presumably near the top of his profession. He has a good manner about him and takes the time to patiently answer any questions. But again, you always have to be cautious. Take charge of your own care as much as you can. There's a good chance your life will depend on it, as you'll see in a moment. So next I had a biopsy to determine the genetic makeup of my cancer. Let's put this in layman's terms so both you and I can understand it. Cancer is the result of mutations within normal cell division, copying errors. The cells of living things divide continuously in order to keep us going. Division involves making copies, but sometimes an error gets made in the copying. This usually results in a damaged cell that can't survive, or one that is detected by the immune system and destroyed. But a very small percentage of false copies can survive and can evade detection by the immune system. The result is cancer. Again, that's a layman's explanation, but I'm just an old bartender, so we'll have to live with it. So the biopsy was to determine the genetic markers, the type of mutation at the heart of my lung cancer. Turned out I have non-small cell lung cancer, whose driver is an EGFR mutation. Don't worry if that's Greek to you, there won't be a test later. But here's the part where the miracle of modern drugs come in. With some specific types of cancers, scientists have been able to engineer drugs that can block them from growing. My type of lung cancer, driven by an EGFR mutation, fell into one of those categories. So I was extremely lucky. But my doctor offered me a choice. Behind door number 1, take the drug that offered the likelihood of living for another couple of years. Or behind door number 2, enter into a clinical trial they were conducting at the hospital. He then walked out the door. He literally wrote both of these options down on a scrap of paper, gave the briefest explanation, then walked out and sent in a couple of nurses to explain the clinical trial. It's amazing how life and death can turn on a dime and you don't even know it. Now, at first, I hear clinical trial and I start thinking next level shit, maybe some kind of cure. Again, I was a beginner at this whole cancer thing. I didn't realize how ingeniously complicated and tricky this disease is. So when I went home, I was actually leaning towards the clinical trial, not for any rational reason other than thinking maybe this is some next level shit. I knew I had to decide quick. My body was racked with rapidly spreading disease. By this time, my lungs were filling with fluids, and my condition was noticeably deteriorating every week. With the help of others, such as my brother, I started researching the clinical trial they wanted me in, as well as the proven drug behind door number 1, which is called Tagrisso. Well, it turned out the clinical trial was not some next level miracle. It was just another drug being developed by a different pharmaceutical giant to compete with Tagrisso. There was no reason to think it was anything next level, and it might actually be a failed attempt. In fact, as far as I know, I think that's what it is. Hey, the world needs guinea pigs too, right? These cancer therapies are now big business. You've probably seen the commercials, which is great. Profits are what make this incredibly expensive research possible. I'm alive now only because AstraZeneca can make a small fortune off this medicine. But I believe if I had chosen door number 2, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'd be a statistic. And those statistics are important. I'm not quite ready to become one. By now, I'd be lying underground with moldy clothes and a permanent grid instead of sitting here with cheap sunglasses and another bad joke to tell you. Ready? A lady with a clipboard stopped me in the street the other day. She said, "Can you spare a few minutes for cancer research?" So I said, "All right, but we won't get much done." Get it? Boy, rough crowd. Anyway, I chose door number one, offered by my doctor, the proven treatment, Tagrisso. And it had an almost immediate impact, clearing the fluid in my lungs and reducing the pain to a mere nuisance. However, the treatment is not effective indefinitely. It usually works for only about 19 months. Eventually, the cancer becomes resistant to the medicine, and then the battle gets tougher. However, I've been fortunate enough to get 4 years and still counting. The cancer is stable. Pain is now usually minimal. I hit the gym every day. But another question you come to when facing this kind of diagnosis is, what am I going to do with my remaining time? It turns out this is the key to a good night's sleep. Before I get to that, I just want to explain my approach to fighting this disease because it ties in with being able to sleep well. So, my approach to both the disease and to how I want to spend the rest of my time can be summed up with one word: fight. I'm under no illusions. I know the odds. But the first step to being able to sleep at night is telling yourself there's a chance. No matter how slim, there is a chance because medicine is doing some pretty incredible things. So, my thinking when I began my treatment went this way. Usually, the therapy works for a couple of years. After that, I'll need some next level shit for me to stay in the game. Well, breakthroughs are happening, but the process is very slow. And the pandemic made it even slower. So I told myself I needed to somehow last 5 years on this drug. That was the goal I set at the beginning. 5 years, I hoped, might be enough for some new treatment to be developed. And I calculated that I can't just sit back and hope that I'm a statistical aberration, someone who gets 5 years on the medicine instead of two. I needed to find some way to boost the odds a bit. This is where I want to be careful. I'm not selling anything. In fact, as I've said, I'm not even going to tell you the things I've tried or the things I'm doing now. I don't want that weight on my shoulders because I simply don't know if they add any improvement to my treatment. And there's a chance they're detrimental in some way. If you really research cancer, one of the things you quickly realize is that if you aren't trained in molecular biology, you have no chance in understanding what's really going on. And I'm just an old bartender, so I won't pitch anything beyond an old Bloody Mary recipe. However, this didn't mean to me to just sit back and let the chips fall where they may. My thinking was this: there could be things out there that might help in the fight. Supplements or old drugs that have been in widespread use for other diseases for years. Not a miracle cure, but something that might extend the time that the drug I'm on keeps the disease stable. I asked some simple questions. For example, would my doctor, if diagnosed with the same disease, just sit back and hope for the best? Or would he try something to improve the bleak odds? You see, your doctor can't tell you, not ethically, about any supplement or treatment unless the science is overwhelmingly clear. And for the science to be overwhelmingly clear, many millions of dollars worth of clinical trials must be completed. I mean, not only does that take oodles of money, but it'll take years you don't have. And no pharmaceutical company can afford to fund these trials unless there's a possible big payoff at the end. So if it involves a drug that was patented many years ago, there won't be a payoff. Or if it involves something you can't patent, like, say, coffee, there's no payoff. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I read about a possible link between capsaicin and lower cancer rates, particularly lung cancer. Capsaicin is what puts the fire in chili peppers. The link was first found because countries that had spicy diets were found to have lower rates of lung cancer. But how much money is Pfizer or Moderna going to spend on studying a spice? There are some academic studies that get done, but the real money has to come from big pharma. So with studies having limits and your doctor being limited to telling you about anything until it's proven in clinical trials, there really isn't much that he can tell you. So what option does that leave you if you're looking for information that might help you survive until the next medical breakthrough? Well, actually, there is an option, a very powerful tool: social media. Now, if there's anything built for hawking snake oil, social media is it. However, that doesn't mean it can't be useful, even crucial. It just means you have to be cautious. We do mostly true crime on this channel. Believe it or not, Reddit is a great research tool. It really is. You're skeptical. Anyone can say anything on Reddit, right? That's true. But if you're in a community with enough members, their combined expertise becomes the filter that can weed out falsehood. If someone says something false, usually someone in that community will point out the falsehood. If someone asserts something without any evidence, people will demand evidence. Well, social media can also work like that for medical things. But please, please, please be careful. When it comes to cancer, we're all desperate for some solution. This leaves us very vulnerable. Not only are there people that will take advantage of that, but there are true believers that get convinced of certain miracle cures, cures which turn out to be false or even harmful. But to me, it was and is a matter of risk management. I understood at the outset that if I attempted some of the things found online, I was risking something that possibly interfered with the medicine I was on or did some other type of harm, such as maybe damage to the kidneys. Normally, it's not worth taking that risk. However, I read the data on surviving 5 years, and it wasn't good at all. And I calculated that it was highly unlikely that a new treatment would be available within 2 or 3 years. So simply by calculating odds, I chose to roll the dice, and I'm still rolling them. Cautiously, I use a variety of supplements that seem to be safe. I take them several hours after taking my medicine, hoping there'll be no interference. Has any of this helped me? Does it have anything to do with the fact that I've gotten more than double the usual time out of this medicine? Probably not, but maybe. The main benefit, though, might be in this. It makes me feel like I'm in the fight. Just like my naive attempts after diagnosis to buy Snickers bars and ice cream sandwiches. I think it's possible that a fighting spirit helps improve your odds. The placebo effect, maybe. Would my doctor try any of this stuff if he had cancer? Are there different things he would try? I can't know, and he can't tell me. But I doubt he'd just surrender and see what happens, because he knows the odds better than anyone. So I recommend getting into the fight. If nothing else, you'll feel you have some impact on your own destiny. And that actually goes a long way towards being able to sleep at night. Now to the other question I faced at being diagnosed with a terminal disease. What do you do with the rest of your time? I've been trying to develop a late career as a writer for several years. I worked extremely hard at it, but with little to show. With my frequent writing partner, Dina McKinnon, I got lucky and sold a couple of screenplays. I had a few unfinished novels. I had some short stories that got picked up for YouTube channels. My approach had been, if I keep working my ass off, maybe I'll get there eventually. But the concept of eventually had become tricky now. I didn't have eventually anymore. I had months, hopefully years. I had to make stuff happen. So I went to work with urgency, working 70, 80 hours a week at projects. I could see the new novel, and this time I actually finished it. I launched websites, wrote stories that got picked up and narrated and have been seen by hundreds of thousands of people. Mostly I failed, but I persisted. One thing I never wanted anything to do with was a camera, but I launched a YouTube channel, and it failed. For that project, I interviewed about 100 people to work on the channel. Eventually, I had dozens working with me. It didn't work out, though, for a lot of reasons, most of them technical. For one thing, I didn't know how to edit videos. And then I started a new channel, one that involved a ton of research for each episode. I learned how to video edit, which is a lot of work. Well, this channel is starting to succeed. A little, not some huge success. But I've met some fantastic people through it, not just those working with me, but several subscribers that I've become friends with. And that's a worthwhile reward. And we're just getting started. So this is the other reason I sleep well at night. I'm still in the game. I only have a small stack of chips in front of me, but I'm in the game. I'm in the fight. Do I know how the story ends? No. I know how it probably ends, but that's not the same thing as knowing for sure how it ends or when it ends. The battle against this disease is going to be different for each person. Everyone has a different situation. But if you feel like you're in the fight, you will be able to sleep a lot better. So get in the fight if you can. I'll give you a quick example. The other day we had dinner with my brother's family, and my niece had just had her wisdom teeth removed. To my amazement, there were no chipmunk cheeks. Turns out she had a miracle cure. All the kids her age were using it. Her sister had also used it successfully a few months before. Did her doctor prescribe this wonder cure for chipmunk cheeks? Nope. Kids her age just passed the cure along through social media. I remember having my wisdom teeth out, And I iced my cheeks every couple of hours, even setting my alarm clock to do it all night. Didn't work. So, for there to be a cure for swollen cheeks after that surgery, it had to be something pretty dramatic. Well, what was it? Pineapple juice. It turns out there's an enzyme inside the juice that reduces inflammation. And judging by my niece's cheeks, it dramatically reduces it. I immediately understood the potential ramification for cancer. Cancer cells thrive inside an environment of inflammation. Now, before you or I rush out and buy cases of pineapple juice or buy the supplement online, it needs to be researched because it's complicated. Such an enzyme might interfere with medicine you're on or with chemotherapy. Biomolecular chemistry is very complicated. We don't know what the effect of this enzyme is on our particular cancer. It could provoke new growth or metastasization. Each one of us has to research this for our own situation. Not a bad idea to check with your doctor. However, here's the thing. You're not going to find a definitive answer. So you'll have to calculate the odds as best you can. It will be a very imperfect calculation. You'll have to weigh all the risks. But that includes the risk of what happens if you do nothing. Maybe pineapple juice won't be something you decide to try. Maybe I won't either. But if you're researching things like this and trying some things you feel are safe to try, you're in the fight. You're not just a passenger on a scary amusement park ride. You're in the game, and there's a value for that. Meanwhile, you're still setting goals in your life. You're striving to reach them. And while you are, science is doing its thing. There is hope. Maybe we have a lot more time, maybe a little, but there is time. And in that time, you can still do awesome things, have incredible experiences, have dreams and fulfill them. Or more importantly, have dreams and chase them. I hope you're in a situation where you can still have these things because with them, life is still good.